What do you do when life hands you a diagnosis that changes everything? Parenting a child with medical complexities isn't something you plan for, but it reshapes you in powerful, profound ways. In today's heartfelt episode, friends and fellow moms Chelsea Kuhn and Amber Pierson open up about their personal journeys raising children with complex medical needs. From life-altering diagnoses to daily victory, they share the real, raw, and redemptive sides of parenting through uncertainty. Together, they offer practical tips and powerful encouragement for parents facing new diagnoses. This episode is a reminder that even in the hardest moments, there is hope, resilience, and joy in the small wins. But before we get there, I quickly want to share a minimalist resource with all of you. I want to share an episode from the Diary of a CEO podcast, which has been a resource for all of you before. The episode is called Masculinity Debate. And I might hesitate to even share the rest of the title because it isn't a representation of the content. It's Masculinity Debate. Are dating apps creating a generation of incels? Lonely men are more dangerous than ever. Again, ignore the title. The content is what I want to talk about and why I'm sharing this with all of you today. In this episode, the host Stephen is joined by Scott Galloway and Logan Ury, one of which wrote the book Lost Boys Report. But anyways, I was blown away by how nuanced and honest this conversation was. Such great perspectives between Scott and Logan. Masculinity narratives to the impact of dating apps on male loneliness and even the alarming rise in violence among adolescent boys. And what I really loved about it is it's not finger pointing. It's about understanding what's really going on and what we can do about it. So if you're a boy mom or want a better understanding of what today's young men are facing, this is an episode to queue up next. Trust me, you'll be thinking about it long after it ends. I listened to it almost 2 months ago and I can't stop thinking about it. So I'll be sure to link it in the show notes. And then lastly, if you have yet to leave a rating and review for the Minimalist Moms podcast, I know I sound like a broken record, but it is the best way to help the Minimalist Moms podcast continue to succeed and grow, especially now that I've separated the content of Clear Intentions and Minimalist Moms. Both these shows really need your love to stay visible in the iTunes chart. So thank you for doing this. It doesn't take much time at all, but makes a huge help. And with that, let's get into the conversation with Chelsea and Amber. This is really special for me because Chelsea, you and I have been friends for the last several years. Amber, we have just met more recently. But Chelsea, I've just really loved getting to know you and your heart. So it's really special to me that I have my friends from Columbus here on the show today.
Well, it's an absolute honor. And again, we appreciate the time.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're just going to dive on in. Today, we're going to be talking about, you guys like to call it navigating the road less traveled, parenting children with medical complexities. So we're going to get into both of your stories. Let's start with you, Chelsea. You can go into as little or as much detail. We have a ton of time. I want to hear about your story, and then we'll go into Amber's story, and then we'll just move to the rest of my questions.
Awesome. Well, I first want to say that it is an honor to be on your show because I've been a longtime listener before we were even friends. And then not only did you change my life through minimalism, but you also, I found out you were in Columbus and I was like, I'm going to make this girl my friend. And it's been so fun getting to know you and kind of talk through a lot of this journey. So my backstory is within this with what Amber and I do. I've got 2 kids. One is almost 9 and one is almost 3, or he is 3. And my almost 9-year-old Kenan was born with a genetic disorder, and then later on at the age of 4, diagnosed with autism and a global developmental delay. The first year of her life was pretty interesting because as a first-time mom, a lot of things happen that you can't put your finger on, but you just feel in your heart isn't right. And we were in and out of a lot of different doctor's appointments with no answers. So she was born at home, perfect birth, everything went great. And then it was around 2 months that we started noticing something wasn't right. So I was kind of thrown for a loop at that point because everything had gone so well for 2 months. And then to have to navigate this path, it was heartbreaking, stressful, all of the things, all of the emotions that come with that. And then we were in and out of children's for 9 more months before we actually got a diagnosis with no answers. And the reason we actually ended up getting a diagnosis is because, and I think this is a blessing in disguise, but she caught a virus. And in the past, she'd been able to shake them pretty easily, even with everything she had going on. But we've been fighting for her for the last 5 months because at 6 months old, she stopped growing. Her stomach was very distended, but she couldn't gain any weight and she was upset all the time. But it still took another 5 months to get answers. And there was a lot of things going on that were confusing people. So just the right testing wasn't happening. And she ended up getting this virus, which put us in the PICU for 10 days. And during that time, it was like, let's everything. There are no limits. Let's test everything because this kid is in very bad shape. And so that virus actually put us in the right hands. And through all of that, after about 24 days total in the hospital, she was diagnosed with glycogen storage disease type 1A. And I have no idea what that was at the time. And I don't expect anybody listening knows what that is, but it's a glucose disorder. And without certain food and cornstarch and regular blood sugar checks, she has about 3 to 4 hours in between each food or round of cornstarch where her glucose could go from safe levels into dangerously low, deathly zones. So sounds scary, but it is actually very manageable. And there's a lot of hope for her ahead. So that's our background with Kinnan. And it's actually how Amber and I ended up even meeting. So,
Yeah. So Amber, you can tell me, we can talk about the meeting and maybe go into your son's story as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chelsea and I were able to meet each other at actually a business that I own called Better Together Playnasium. It's an indoor adaptive children's play gym. And she came in with her daughter, and we both kind of were connected over the fact that we realized, oh, we have children that have additional needs and are kind of in this disability community. And we immediately were like, yep, you're my person. And that's how we kind of got connected in that story. There's so much more to it, but a little bit on the back end where we started, I have 2 children as well. Chelsea and I always joke because we have opposites. Our oldest hers is a girl, mine's a boy. And then we have our opposites. I have a younger daughter and she has a younger son. So, but they're all about the same age, ironically. Yeah. So my son Kai, who is 8 or going to be 8 soon, is my diagnosed kiddo. So my oldest as well. And a little different than Chelsea, I did not know at all until right before he was born. So I had a very normal pregnancy, which was very unexpected. Everything was great. All my testing was fine. And I always say that there was some other being that told me, whatever it is you believe. I believe that God put that on my heart, that something was going on. And about 36 weeks pregnant, I was like, this baby is just not moving around in here as much as he should be. So I told my doctor and I said, I just want to get another ultrasound. I just need to know and kind of calm my nerves. It was at that appointment that they did a ultrasound test and found out that he had a significant amount of fluid on his brain, and they were diagnosed him with hydrocephalus. Obviously, I had no idea what that term meant, just like Chelsea, when you get these big terms thrown at you. And I'm kind of just like, well, what does that mean for us now? Well, they had me leave immediately from that appointment and go to maternal fetal medicine, where I had to undergo more extensive testing, stress testing, and another about 2.5-hour long ultrasound to kind of determine what the next steps were going to be. And we decided at that point I needed to have him delivered via C-section as soon as possible. So that was actually on a Thursday morning. And I was scheduled to deliver the following Monday when I would be exactly 37 weeks, technically full term at that point. So blessing in disguise that I got to know it a little bit ahead of time because we were able to prepare for that at delivery. And we knew he would immediately be going to a Nationwide Children's Hospital here in Columbus for a brain surgery. So what they do is they place something called a shunt in his head that drains that fluid that's not supposed to be in those ventricles out into their stomach. So it's a permanent device that they place at birth. And then the rest from there was kind of we're not really sure what's going to come of this. So we'll wait and see. But anything involving a diagnosis with the brain and any brain anomalies, you can only imagine it's going to affect several aspects of your child's life, since it is the largest organ and the most important that makes everything function. So kind of fast forward several years in and out of the hospital, Kai started to just rack up a laundry list of different diagnoses because of that hydrocephalus. He started having seizures around 6 months old, and we kind of were warned that would be a possibility and got his epilepsy diagnosis. It was more closer to about 3 years old that he got his spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy diagnosis. And if you can imagine all those milestones from birth to age 3 that they're meeting that are huge, he just was not. So we just kind of were racking them up as time went on. And it was just well, we will see what he shows us and what he's able to do. And then he also, with that fluid on his brain, had his optic nerve affected. So he is also legally blind. And that has been a really big challenge as he's been growing and not able to see what we're doing in the world around him. And at this point, almost 8, all those things considered, he's happy and relatively healthy. And so we are just kind of taking life every day, one step at a time, right? Because that's all you really can do when all of those things are thrown at you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So knowing both of you on a personal level and also just looking at you both, I'll get to my question, but I was going to say both of you are always just so hopeful and happy. And I know I'm seeing you probably and we always have fun meetings when I see you guys. We're always having a good time. But you do radiate this joy and this peace that surpasses understanding. I know a lot of that does come from your faith. If not, that's the foundation of where it comes from. And we can talk about that, but you really do have a heart to not just reach the Christian that is going through medical complexities. You want to help anyone and everyone that is going through this because there have been some dark days as well. And there probably still are dark days as well. But I want to go back to those moments when you are receiving those diagnoses, whatever the plural term would be. How did you begin to make sense of it all? And how did you reconcile that as an individual, but also we can talk about faith and share that here? Because that's a lot of, regardless of if someone's listening and they're not a believer, I think you do start to question the universe or why is this happening to me?
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you want to start?
Sure. There was definitely those moments. And those first 2 years for us with Kai, I kind of was in this headspace of like, but I did all the right things. I did everything I was supposed to do when I was pregnant. I feel like I've been a believer pretty much my whole life and was raised that way. And like, I went to college and I worked hard in my career and I was a teacher and I wanted to serve my community. And it was like, why, God, is this happening to us when I feel like I'm like doing what you ask of me? And also in those moments too, you're questioning why, but you're also just so much in that fight or flight mode and survival that I almost felt like at that time I was angry, but also just more like I got to put your bootstraps on, right? And you just got to get through because here's your child in the hospital all the time and you have to be strong for them. And so I feel like in that beginning where it was challenging, I was so go, do the research, find the answers, research different doctors and taking them to different specialists to make sure we're getting the best possible options and chances for him. That I didn't even really process it all, I think, until he was maybe 2.5, 3 years old when we were out of those trenches. So in the beginning, it was really like, because I was so busy, that was almost like a way to protect myself. And it was almost easier in a sense. It was not easy by any means, but in my mind, I was able to kind of protect myself and it made it more tolerable.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I don't know.
Well, I think part of your way of coping is taking action on things too.
100%.
Yeah. Which I can totally relate to that. I'd say we were the same. Everybody, no matter what your life looks like, everybody goes through stuff at some point. Like those trenches for us looked like diagnoses with our kids, but everyone has a trench or multiple trenches. and life is not supposed to look like smooth sailing. I don't care what anybody says or what they think. If you look at the timeline trajectory of anybody's life, you will see that there are so many ups and downs. And yet for some reason, our minds get stuck on this smooth line or the ups. And we forget that the downs are actually what create the ups and make us appreciate those peaks even more. And so I was always prepared. You never want those things to happen. You never want to find yourself in a trench. And sometimes we're down there and we're like, how did we even get here? But they're going to happen. So I was taught my whole life to make sure that I'm prepared for those, that I quote unquote dig my well before I'm thirsty. So what that comes down to is, some people might think of, preparation in different ways, but much of it is in our mindset. And so preparing our minds for when hard things happen, not looking forward to them, not assuming that they're going to come and dwelling on that, but just recognizing if something hard happens, how will I handle it? And that could be in business, that could be in your health, that could be in finances, in family relationships, whatever it is, in your job. But when that trench came for us, I felt like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be the cheesiest analogy ever. I felt like I already had my shovel. Sorry about that.
She was like, let's go.
I was not preparing that one, but I did feel like we already had the tools in place as far as mindset went. So when this happened with Kenneth, for us, what those tools looked like were community, the important association, people that were going to be there for us and lift us up and encourage us and not speak negatively, because there were a lot of unanswered questions. So when we were in the hospital, we were very careful who we told. We actually didn't even tell much of our family right away because we didn't have the answers. And it was not that we didn't trust them or they would actually be negative. It's just that we knew we were going to get bombarded with more people to keep up to date, more people that would have questions we didn't have answers to. And I knew that I was not going to be able to handle that when I was fighting for my child's life for a month and not sleeping. And the sleep I did have was on a terrible bed at Children's, which, by the way, can somebody listening to this, if you have connections to hospitals, get parents decent sleep.
We need
get us some beds.
We need to do better.
Gym, good food, and a bed. Like, we're so much better off. But decision making is critical in those situations. And I think that preparing for it on the front end is what really helped us, that in the midst of that, we were able to make better choices. Like, we walked in, and this is something a lot of people have asked me about, like, how did you, when Kenan looked so sick, how did you stay focused on a positive outcome when other people, doctors and nurses, were walking in and giving us these looks like she's not going to make it? And as soon as we checked into the hospital, Blake ran across the street to Walgreens, found the most healthy picture of her that he could, printed off 4 of them, put them up on all 4 corners of her bed, facing the door. So if someone walked in, they saw those photos and they would say things like, she's so beautiful. And be like, yes, this is what we're going back to. And we knew that there were no promises, but everyone's look on their face, it really felt like it went from despair to hope. And that they knew, like, we had faith in this process actually coming out on the other side in a positive way.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to ask, how did you guys communicate with doctors without feeling steamrolled into a mindset, like you just said, no, we're keeping hope here. Like, we're going to keep affirming this forever.
Well, I think we both have a pretty feisty personality.
I was going to say, from what I know about you, Chelsea.
Mama Bear's going to come out at any point. This is a good time for it. But even if you don't have that type of personality, honestly, we told our doctors, and Blake would do this too. He is a great advocate. Having him there was very helpful, but not that he wouldn't be, but we would tell people, listen, we really value a positive mindset. We don't want sugarcoating, but we always want all aspects of this. And we are very invested in the full conversation. I think that put people in the mindset of who we're not just telling these people what to do, like we're partners in this. And we would even say that, like, we're partners in this with you.
Right. I think it was a huge learning curve, right? Because in the beginning, and when you don't spend a lot of time in this world, I had, knock on wood, to this day, never broken a bone. I have, like, my only experience in doctor's offices and hospitals was like my annual checkup. And then when I
Yeah.
physically had a baby, that was
Yeah.
it. So, at first you're like, oh my gosh, I have to do everything that they say. They're the experts. This is what they went to school for. But then I feel like I had a lot of, like you said earlier, my coping was taking action. And when I would start to do more research, I realized, okay, this isn't the be all say all. Like, we've actually done an entire like YouTube episode on doctor shopping because you think, okay, here I am. I mean, my son, when he got that shunt placed on day 2 of life, we were given a neurosurgeon. I wasn't there for that process. They did it. They saved his life. Very grateful. Our follow-up appointment, he did not like the way he spoke to us. I did not like how he had a list of all the things Kai would never do. And I said right then and there, I want you to be able to tell me realistically what you think could potentially be the outcome, but that's not necessarily going to be the case. So yes, I want you to be realistic. I want to know all of the potentials, but we're not going to sit here and say he can't do this, he won't do that, he'll never, because that was not going to be something we were going to accept. And then once I kind of had some empowerment behind that of, wow, I have a choice in this and I can actually shop around and find who best meets our needs and who thinks the similar ways that we do and supports us in that, then it gave me a lot more empowerment behind, okay, we're not just going to let these doctors tell us exactly what to do. We are a team.
Yeah.
And we've kind of taken, years to build the team and the network that we have with who supports Kai now. Almost 8 years down the road. So
Yeah. Same.
Yeah. I really don't have any experience in the hospital either until having babies or just like your yearly, like you said. But we did have an instance with Martin early on. I think he was 5 months old. I actually don't remember, but we went to Children's and I felt like the doctor, the pediatrician had kind of scared me into going there. I did go there. We ran a few tests. They drew his blood. They popped a vein. Like it was just all very overwhelming. But then they wanted to do a spinal tap to figure out why his fever wasn't coming down. I'm like, let me just nurse my baby. This is really overwhelming to him. I was like, let me just give him some time. Like, I just want a little bit more time. I'm not trying to compare what I have gone through in that instance to what you guys have gone through. But the fact is, the doctors do know the science. The doctors do have that medical insight, but you know your child. And so there's always going to be this level of knowingness that they're detached from. And so I think advocating like you did, Chelsea, with having the pictures of Kenan up there healthy and returning to that, there's just a detachment there from doctors. And I mean, I know they can't attach to everyone, but yeah, I think that's why you have to know your child and be willing to advocate because they're not necessarily going to do that for you.
absolutely.
Okay, I want to talk about self-care. Let's talk about self-care. I hate that word. But it's so important, especially when you're going through these seasons of life, or maybe this is just what the new normal looks like. So how do you guys make sure that you prioritized your mental health and well-being? How do you prioritize your marriage? I would also think that during this time, how did you and your spouses, sorry, these are like 2 or 3 questions, but how did you and your spouses support one another during that time?
I will say again, in those first few years, there was no self-care. Honestly, I'm like looking back and I'm like, what did I do? There was not much. And it's taken a long time for me to start to make that a priority and realize that I need to be the best version of myself to be able to, and that could go, for any caretaker, mom, dad, whoever. If you're not taking care of yourself, it's the airplane analogy. You got to put your mask on first to be able to care for someone else. But I will speak to the marriage thing. I'd say in the first couple of years, Danny and I, that's my husband, were kind of just like on that autopilot. I quit my job and stayed home with Kai. So I was teaching full time. That wasn't realistic anymore. And he went into, I have to work hard and support my family with work. So he really put most of his time and energy into his job. And I spent most of my time and my energy in caretaking, taking Kai to all of the therapies, the appointments, any surgeries, hospital overnights, anything. we would try our best in those years to do, oh, we're going to do a little date night, like in at home or in the hospital and just watch a movie. Half the time we'd fall asleep halfway through it anyways, but it was just trying to make the time for that. Now I think we've gotten a lot better. We've built that community that Chelsea mentioned earlier, which I'm sure we will touch on more because that is huge, of people that we can trust and who know Kai and his needs to be able to lean on. It At first I felt really guilty for being willing and even like allowing someone else to step into that, because I'm like, well, that's my baby and I feel like I have to be there to do all these things for him. But once you find those people that you can trust and you can lean on, I'm very blessed and lucky to have a lot of my family, my mom mostly, and my sister who live locally, who have been there from the beginning and know a lot of Kai's needs, to be able to come and watch my kids while we can take a date night. And we've even worked our way up to like a weekend away, which was huge in the beginning. And it was like, no, we will never be able to do that. Yet, yes, we can. We just have to do a lot more preparing and a lot more notes around the house and labeled medication bottles and things like that. But it is not easy and it takes a lot more effort. And it's already hard to prioritize your spouse when you have kids, point blank, but it is doable.
Yeah. Yeah. It comes down to intentionality and planning. And Amber does have family here. We don't. So I've been very thankful that the Lord has always put the right person in our path to help take care of the kids when I do need backup. And we started that immediately, actually, while Kenan was still even in the hospital. When she was a year old, she actually had her first birthday in the hospital. And I thought I was going to be fine. That's the moment that kind of wrecked me. And we were able to call the babysitter that we had prior, educate her on what was going on, and give her the choice, like, do you want to stay with us or not? And she loved her so much. We had her for the next 3 years, and because of her, we were able to get out, once or twice a month and be able to just get some time away from the house, which I think in turn, definitely made me a better mom, being able to have that time away. And I think so many moms forget that it is in taking care of ourselves or in taking care of our spouse and being able to have that time with just them that we become a better example. We become a more in tune mother. And it's so refreshing to be able to have that. So we think oftentimes, like Amber, I felt like at the beginning I couldn't get away, but I had to make time for something so that I could be what she needed me to be. So it felt like the sacrifice was backwards at first until I realized I needed to do that for both of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say too, just on like self-care in general, I think so many people think, okay, self-care, I got to go get my facial, I got to get my nails done.
We talk about this.
We talk about this in our book, and it can be so much simpler than that. And I will be the first to say I listen to a lot of podcasts and I read a lot, and it's easy to hear someone say, just take 5 minutes. I mean, we talk about it in our church small group all the time. It's like, just take the 5 minutes of your day to spend with God. And I'm working on being better about that. But it really could be something as simple as getting your cup of coffee and stepping outside and just breathing for 5 minutes without kids around you in the sun, unless you live here in Ohio, which maybe you'll get that twice a month. But
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be this big facade, this big appointment day where you have all of the stuff and you're getting a massage. It can be very simple and small. And the more you're able to do that, the easier it seems. And then you do it more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you talked about that, Amber, just the small moments, because that's another thing you guys like to talk about. You talk about celebrating the small wins. It is those small moments throughout your day that when it does feel heavy, that you can lean into. So I'll let you both talk a little bit more about that and how that's been a benefit, shifting your mindset to those small wins.
Well, through this whole process with Kenan's diagnosis, I actually ended up developing an autoimmune disease. And the healing part of it came in the tiniest things. And it would take time to, like, years later, I would recognize that these little tiny wins were what stacked up to these major moments. And so, like Amber said, I would start by drinking water first in the morning and calling that a win. Like, I hydrated before I caffeinated. Fantastic. So it could be little tiny things like that. But I remember on our children's side of things with Kenan, having a global developmental delay meant that she was always behind her peers. That can be so hard, especially when it's your first kid. And maybe if it's one of your second, third, or whatever children as well, I'm sure maybe it doesn't get easier. But with her, I had nothing to compare it to other than everybody else's kids. And that hurts so much because I would be constantly getting these updates, and social media has so many benefits. It's how we all met, but it also can be so detrimental, and you have to be very guarded and careful about how you use that space, because I would see other people's children hitting things that my kid wasn't. And it would, if I wasn't careful, send me spiraling into despair. And I remember a friend of mine, the kids were playing, and her son was much younger than Kenan. They were stacking, and he was stacking some blocks. And she did not mean ill by this at all, but she was like, come on, Kenan, like, let's see you do it. And I knew Kenan couldn't do it. But she didn't know that. She was just trying to be helpful and include her and all of that, which I so appreciate. And so that is one situation where I had to say, I'm so glad she's including her. I need to just kind of take a deep breath and go, I'll help Kenan with this later, and just accept that we're not there yet. I'm not going to let it bother me. Mm-hmm. Well, about a week later, I turn over and Kenan is stacking blocks. And not only one or two, she stacked like 10, and then she put a little animal on the top. And it was almost like this little encouragement that not only can I stack blocks, Mom, for the first time ever, I stacked 10 and I put an animal on top, like as humor. And so I think that we see a lot of things like that. And maybe from our perspective, we appreciate it even more because there's these little wins really are so big. But also I think that as a whole, humans should look at their wins, and not everything has to be massive or super successful. It can be just like you PR'd on a workout, or you ran a little harder, a little faster. Nobody knows. You cooked dinner 5 times this week. Hooray. Whatever it might look like. Not everything needs a reward, and not everything needs to be recognized publicly. But I think we as moms know how to recognize those tiny things a little bit better.
And I will say too, those smaller things are really hard to see on the day in and day out. I would sit there and feel like Kai was not making any progress. Physically, he's in a wheelchair. He's unable to stand independently. So as a young child, he wasn't even able to sit up for a very long time, to the point where I thought, well, maybe he's going to just need some sort of physical support forever. And so for me, seeing him every single day, you don't realize it. And then having other people in that other community that knows him, and they'll be away for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, come back and they're like, wow, look at him sitting so much taller. And I think he's almost got this by himself. And I'm like, I didn't even notice. But that again can be applied, like Chelsea said, in every aspect of your life. If you're seeing it every single day, it's not going to seem so big. And then until you take a step away and you're like, wow, I actually did accomplish XYZ, or I really did hit that goal or that milestone. And so for me, the fact that Kai started sitting independently at almost 2 years old seemed huge, but he just sat up. But to some people, that seems so minor and so trivial. And it was like we were going to throw a huge party because we never knew if that was something he would even be able to do ever. So yeah, I think taking that time away too, you're like, wow, okay. And seeing someone else's perspective really helps you realize how big those actual small things are.
Yeah. There's a really great book about all of that called The Power of Moments. Have you read that?
Moments? No, I haven't. I'll write it down.
Oh, that's
Um,
totally, you'll love it. But the power of moments is a study on the power of celebrating small wins
Yeah.
and
mhm,
examples from all kinds of different areas of life. It's
mhm.
really beautiful.
I wanted to go back to something you said, Chelsea. I want to talk about that moment with the mom that was encouraging Ken in there with the block building. And you had that instance of, I'm not going to, I feel sad. I might feel embarrassed. I might feel all the things, but you leaned into, I'm going to choose not to feel that way. I'm going to choose to look at her as she's just trying to help. She's just trying to offer, I don't know, support. I want to talk about the moments that I guess you guys have experienced. And I want to, I guess, address two things. How do you guys keep from feeling frustrated when people say, quote unquote, the wrong thing to you and you encounter those moments? And then I guess on the other side of that, what are things that we shouldn't be saying to people that maybe do more harm than help?
Yeah. Well, I think we can preface all of that by saying Amber and I talk about this topic a lot because one of our goals, I mean, our organization is all about finding joy in things. And we want to exemplify that. So if we're focusing on the negative, then how are we ever going to help people focus on the joy?
Right.
So I think it's important to recognize that things could be better. But if you're given two options, like in this case, focusing on the fact she's including my child or focusing on how hurt I am. And if I went with the latter, I'm focusing on the offense. And then I start feeling sad. I start feeling negative. I can't enjoy the fact that this woman is trying to include my child, which is a huge win because we've faced so many situations where she's not included.
Mhm.
So making that choice and back to, at the very beginning, I talked about preparing for the trenches before they happen. It's the same sort of mindset. You're going to run into people saying the wrong thing. They may not know it's the wrong thing. And I would say like 99% of the cases, they don't even know it's the wrong thing. They don't know what to say. So
Mhm.
being unoffendable and having grace with people is something that we really try to work on. And we're certainly not perfect, but we also believe that's the way that the Lord would have us live and to bring more good into the world than negativity. I think is really important. And when it comes to people just saying the wrong thing, it's an opportunity for conversation.
Right.
Mhm.
And I was going to say, I think you made a really good point about how we personally, Chelsea and I talk about this all the time, don't typically take offense to it because we'd rather the conversation be had than to not be had at all and our child be ignored. I think it is important and everybody is valid and to feel how they feel. So absolutely Chelsea has that moment where, it's hard to watch and she's going to feel some sadness in that. And I've always encouraged other moms who are specifically in our situation of parenting disabled children, but also any mom to feel what you're feeling, but also it's not an opportunity to lash out on someone else and take it personally
Yeah.
because like Chelsea said, majority of the time that is not their intention. Filter it.
And also recognize some other people don't have filter.
Right.
Okay. They're just not your people.
And that's true. Not everyone is your people, but I think we've always said I would encourage people to just simply ask about our child. I think I've used the scenario before where, Kai is physically in a wheelchair. It's very obvious that things are
Yes.
different. I would much rather have a child, a parent, whoever come up and ask, why is he in a wheelchair? That does not offend me. And then that way, at least opens the door for a conversation as to why he is and then how he can be included. Sometimes kids will come and present it like, hey, do his legs not work? Now, that may make some parents upset. It does not upset me because his legs do not work properly. It's just the fact of the matter. They work differently. And then I can explain to them how or why. So I think at least starting the conversation, but I read this somewhere and I can't exactly remember where it is or where it was or where I heard it, but it was always just starting with a hello and introducing your name. Because it does not matter if they are delayed. It does not matter if they cannot see you. It does not matter if they cannot verbally respond to you. You are treating them just as a human as anyone else. And you would introduce yourself by saying, hi, my name is Amber. And then that way you can open that door to a conversation, but they still feel like a human. They feel
Yeah.
respected. And then if it's a child like mine who cannot verbally respond, I at least can say, oh, his name is Kai. Thanks for saying hi to him. And then
Mhm.
that continues to make them feel more comfortable and you feel more comfortable to have open dialogue, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, that does. That's great advice, especially for little ones. I'm thinking of my son Benjamin. I'm like, you never go through a course at school on how to know how to have these conversations or how to
Yeah.
communicate. I just spoke to a man actually yesterday, Stuart Vogel, and he has the Resilient Souls community. And actually, they're doing some work that they're hoping to be released in the fall on how to have these conversations with schools specifically for principals and teachers. Because he was saying, as a teacher, like flash forward several years, he found out that something was going on in someone's household. And he was like, was I kind enough? Was I empathetic? As people say, like, did I hold enough space for that person? Yeah. But it's like, I don't know. Did we say the right thing? And you don't want to say the wrong thing, but it's really learning. Again, just introducing yourself and saying, this is my name. That makes total sense. And it may seem simplistic, but it's what everyone wants. The dignity remains intact.
Right.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
there was for so long, and I do feel like this is starting to shift, but for the longest time, there was kind of this don't stare.
Yeah.
And because it was like, don't stare at them, don't look at them, then what were we teaching? Even as adults, we were teaching ourselves and our children to physically ignore that person, act like
Mhm.
they do not exist. And what is that going to make them feel like? Like they
Yeah.
are literally invisible. And we're sitting here trying to, like you just said, Diane, save space for these people. So, no, that's actually the opposite of what we should be doing. We should be looking right at them as we would anyone else and
Mhm.
introducing ourselves. And again, there may be someone who would take offense to something someone says, and it may hurt their feelings, but I do think that in the long run, if they were to walk away from that situation and think about it, it would come back around of, well, you know what, at least they had a curiosity about me and or my child, and
Mhm.
that alone is inclusion.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So I think maybe in the moment it may have stung a little bit, if depending on how
Mhm.
someone says something. But I always say, and Chelsea and I say this, I'd rather someone say something than nothing at all. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Just a few more things before we wrap up. I want to talk about someone that maybe has recently received a diagnosis for a child. What wisdom or encouragement do you have to them as they're processing these first initial days?
Come find us.
Yeah.
Come find Lemon
Yeah.
Cake. We'll be here to hopefully help you laugh
Yeah.
because you're going to need that, and
Mhm.
find humor in it, but also and turn to the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, from a Christian point of view, turn to God, lay everything at his feet and ask him to walk you through it. There's this scripture I think we have both turned to more times than we have wanted to, but it's do not grow weary in well doing. And remember too that the Lord is always with the brokenhearted. And he's not going to forget about us. He'll always, I believe the Lord has a huge heart for mothers. And he understands that we are raising up these precious souls no matter what they are capable of, what they look like, or anything like that. And so I do believe no matter where you stand on your faith or not, I do believe God holds you very special in his heart. Yes, come find us. And from a very practical standpoint, take a walk, get some water, try to sleep. If you're not sleeping properly, if you're not getting sunlight, if you're not drinking water and not just, bottled water or make sure you're getting some electrolytes and salt, those things will help you make better decisions and more clear choices in the midst of a really hard road. And when I was going through the roughest time of all of this, I remember having one or two songs that I would listen to that would just put my head in a different place, give me that boost of energy and assistance that I needed. And I would also have, Blake and I used to say, like, we would have a tap out card. We didn't actually have a card, but like just tap out and have that person in your corner that you can go to and have a clear conversation on the front end. Like, I'm going to come to you when I say I need to tap out, like I have nothing left. or we have to switch for a minute. Like, let me take a walk or do something, have coffee on my own, but be able to have someone you can tap out with and be prayerful with. This is going to sound silly. I've got another one for you. I used to voice message vent to myself.
Okay.
Open a voice note. And if I needed to say stuff that I was like, I don't really want this to go to anybody else, and I kind of don't want to say this to God, but I need to say it to someone, I would just voice message vent and then delete it. And that's therapy right there. Yeah.
I mean, and it's coming back to that community again. Like if in those, it's hard when you're in it to listen to something like this because you're like, sure, yeah, I'll go laugh or I'll listen to a song, and because you're so, you're so in it, and it's so dark sometimes, and it's so scary, like terrifying. But when you do find the time to take a step away, then that's when you find yourself again. And if you can even take a few minutes to do that, you'll realize that that's exactly what you need. And it is possible. Like you can get through it on the other side. And I'm not going to say it's never going to be hard again, because I mean, Kai's having surgery next week and it's going to be hard, and we're going to be back in the hospital, and I'm not looking forward to it at all, but there is still hope on the other side. So you lean on that community of people, be able to tap out, be able to take that walk, and just vent to yourself. But even I had 3 other moms who I met on Instagram, and I would just message them. I remember being 3 a.m. in the hospital when Kai was having seizure after seizure, and we were trying new medications. And these moms I knew also had sons with severe intractable epilepsy. And I was just messaging them. And oh my gosh, they got me through some of those darkest times, just having them to vent to, even if they didn't have the right answers. I knew I wasn't alone,
Yeah.
Right. And they're not going to judge you for it.
Correct.
You found your people.
Yeah.
I think, when you are going through that, say it's a brand new diagnosis, remember too that you're standing strong for your child, and it might be the hardest thing you've ever done in your whole life. It might be the hardest thing you ever do. But someone else is going to come behind you and need hope that they can do it too. And you have the opportunity to be that bridge for them. Because there will be people that aren't strong enough to build the bridge. They need somebody that's done it for them and can help them across to the other side. And we all have the opportunity to choose to be that, which you might be hearing this and be like, I want to punch this girl. This is not what I want to hear right now. I got it. Like, I've been there, but I'm telling you, there are going to be people that come out of nowhere and say, thank you for doing what you did, because I needed that in my darkest moment.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm so glad you touched on that community piece, because that's something. Aren't you guys trying to maybe have a community meetup here in Columbus?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I think that you guys also just want to be connectors for people to make those communities. And yes, like absolutely connect with the two of you, grab your guys' ebook, but also you guys can possibly put them in touch with someone in their own area if you've made those connections. It is a really strong knit community. And yeah, I'm grateful for you sharing this with my audience. It's something I've never talked about before, but again, is so important and necessary so people don't feel alone. But you guys, where can listeners find your new ebook and connect with you online if they want to hear more?
You can find
fun.
You can find us online at makinglemoncake.com. And if you're like, lemon cake, because when life hands you lemons, make lemon cake, because in this situation, lemonade is not going to cut it.
Nope. You got to throw a party, we say.
You need a cake. All right. So makinglemoncake.com, and then also Making Lemon Cake on Instagram and on YouTube. And we do have an ebook available on our website. And it is all about finding joy in the journey at that initial diagnosis, but really it's for all moms.
It is.
We'll tell a little bit more of our story about finding your tribe of people, using social media as platforms, self-care. We touch on all of these things in much more depth there. It's a great resource.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, as we wrap things up here, this is the Minimalist Moms podcast, and I ask my guests 2 questions here to wrap things up. These are more rapid fire, so don't feel pressure to have the right answer. The first one is, what has been a beneficial resource in your life that you want to share with the listeners? And again, this doesn't have to be in relation to what we talked about today, just something that has been a benefit to you guys.
Before we answer that, I forgot, we have a special code for our book for just your listeners, and it is Minimalist Moms, plural, and you'll get 20% off our ebook.
I'll be sure to include that in the show notes for listeners too. So it's just easy access. They don't have to go searching everything out.
Perfect. Do you want to answer that?
Okay, a resource?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I am terrible at rapid fire responses. I really am. I do. You go first.
Okay, this one is easy for me, and this is not that I want to butter up Diane in any way, but Minimalist Moms, this podcast has been life-changing for me because when I was at like rock bottom, I was trying to simplify so many things in my life in order to be able to take care of the most important things. And I found this podcast in the midst of that. Kenan was almost 4 years old. I started listening to this podcast, started revolutionizing our house, our products, the way that we did everything. And it helped me to really cut out a lot of the excess, not just material things, but additional activities and commitments so that I could find a little respite and be able to focus on healing my child and myself. So this podcast has been invaluable, and you have so many resources within it. I would say any on decluttering are hands down my favorite. I will put them on and go clean house, and it's so fun.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm so glad that we actually ended up connecting during that time. That just made me feel really special because you kind of just wonder, like, am I doing this? Am I reaching anyone? Should I keep doing this? So I just appreciate that it has made an impact, at least on one person.
Absolutely.
What about you, Amber?
Many more than one. Okay, I don't know if you would call this really a resource, but I've like music is my like therapy. So I've actually been listening to a group called Vitamin String Quartet.
Oh yeah.
And it is all like popular-ish songs but it's all instrumental. And it is what I put on if I just need to clear my head. I don't want to have to think about anything. And when I'm working, when I'm not, and it just helps ground me. So I don't know if it's like a really good resource, but if you just need to like chill a little.
No, I love that.
It's my go-to.
It's a great resource.
Instrumental Snoop Dogg.
I mean, sometimes there can be Snoop Dogg.
Oh, okay. That's so fun. I listen to instrumental Taylor Swift sometimes because I like to listen to something while I'm reading, but I can't listen to words while I'm reading.
Yeah. Well,
Totally.
It's too distracting. All right. Well, my last question for both of you, and then I'll let you go, is what is something that you can't stop talking about?
Anything?
Anything.
Tacos.
It's Tuesday too, Taco Tuesday.
I mean, I'm always looking and trying new tacos, suggesting new places to get.
Where do you like in Columbus for the Columbus locals?
Well, there's a place that's by my house that's like super authentic, and it's like Los Hermanos something, something, something. So truthfully, I don't have the specific, and it's a truck like on 161. But usually I'm just going to what's that place at Easton? I'm blanking now.
A taco place at Easton?
Yeah.
Condados.
Duh.
Oh, Condado. There's a Condado at Easton?
It's a chain. It's not super it's not super.
I didn't know there were. Oh, I guess there is a Condado at Easton, isn't it?
Yeah, that's like my go-to if I just want like a good taco, or we go to the local place. But I'm always trying new tacos places. North Market has a couple random different places that you could get tacos from.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Good to know. Well, this is something that we both can't stop talking about. Burn Boot Camp. Yes.
Burn Boot Camp.
Yes. Burn Boot Camp, which I first, shout out to Minimalist Moms again, first heard about because you interviewed the owner. And that. And then a couple days later, happened to pick up something from a friend who worked out there. And it just sent me down that road. So Amber and I have been, speaking of self-care, finally got ourselves back to the gym.
Yep.
After 8 years. And we've been loving Burn since January. Yeah.
Yep.
And they're national. So if you're near Burn Boot Camp,
check it out.
Yes. Join us.
Yeah. I saw, didn't you just take your 50th or 100th class, Chels?
50th.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to 100, but 50th.
You'll get there.
I'm in the 60s. Yeah. You can be in the 70s.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned that here at the end because I was thinking when I asked you about self-care, I have been seeing you guys will post about Burn Boot Camp, and I'm like, you're back in it. How do I say this? Like there are seasons, I think for anyone just in young motherhood that it is hard to get out and take care of yourself, let alone with a medical complexity. But you guys are prioritizing that now. And I think, like you said, the mask metaphor, or just like not being able to pour from an empty cup. It's all those metaphors. I think it's such a good thing that you guys are doing for yourself and your holistic health as well.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks.
It's
Yeah.
definitely one of those things that felt impossible. It's like financially, time-wise, like it felt like this will never happen.
Mhm.
And it's just one of those things you hear people say, like, rip the Band-Aid off, just do it, make the commitment, figure it out. And it truly was that. I
Yep.
thought that this was never going to happen until I said, I'll try.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's no turning back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I paid them.
Yeah. Well, you guys, it was so great to talk with you. Like I said, it's great getting to talk with friends, but I do think that this message is one that's super necessary. I think your book is going to help so many people. I'll be sure to link everything we talked about in the show notes today, including your gymnasium, Amber. I pulled that up and I'm going to link that in the show notes as well for
Thank you.
Columbus locals. But I just appreciate you guys being willing to share your stories, being vulnerable with the audience, and for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having us.
We had so much fun. Thank you.